All right. Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our fifth episode of Breck Time Broadcast. And tonight we have an amazing evening planned for you to talk a little bit about a great subject of mine, which is the Association of the United States Army. But before I get into it, I still want to thank a few folks that always continually to support the broadcast, and that is a couple of folks. And first, I'll talk about the NCO PD Live, Staff Sergeant Hicks out in Fort Eustis, Virginia, and of course, Freestyle every day for everyone, and that's Command Sergeant Major Halliburton, and then of course Major Josh Powers, who runs the Field Grade Leader website. They always continually to showcase Breck Time broadcast, so I always want to make sure I showcase them as well. So to help me introduce my guest speaker, or my guest tonight, our guest tonight, I would love to be able to showcase with you real quick, a quick video real quick. So please stand by. All right, sorry about that, having technical difficulties, but I promise you, I'm going to get this squared away real quick. And here we go. All right. And yes, so let me throw out a quick caveat. Yes, it did say 2015 to present. And I know it's a little bit older video, but it was the one that I wanted to show because, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a round of applause for our 15th SMA, Sergeant Major of the Army, retired Dan Dailey. SMA, thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Well, I appreciate it, Sergeant Major. And I'll tell you, I'm excited about being on Breck Time. As people will hear in a little while, I do a little podcast series myself at the Association of the United States Army. And it is very comforting to be on the answering side versus the questioning side for once.
Well, I told you there is no pressure from my side because I am not as gifted or as talented as you, but I do have a great, very proud of what we do here and just very honored to have you on the net. Obviously today we will have a lot of folks coming on, but before we get into that, I would love to give you an opportunity to just do your opening comments and tell us a little bit about yourself if you wish, Sergeant Major, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you for doing this, and thanks for putting this together. It's so great to see our non-commissioned officer corps staying up to date on technology and communicating with the outside world. So what a great initiative by you, Sergeant Major, and my hat off to you and applause to you, and hope you continue to move this thing forward. Well, I'm just, of course, I'm retired now, Sergeant Major of the Army, Dan Dailey. You probably see the little symbol up there. I have a new occupation, but I didn't go too far off the main ship. I'm rowing around in the lifeboat on the outside, so I work for the great Association of the United States Army now, and I'm enjoying life. I come to you live from my apartment in just outside Washington, D.C. My wife and I did retire in Pennsylvania. We have our retirement there in our hometown. And we've been practicing, like everyone, a lot of social distancing lately, working, teleworking and working digitally. But I'm just excited to be here tonight. And I'm excited for anyone, if they have questions, still go ahead and write in, because I told Sergeant Major Breckenridge, don't hold back. Just if they come in, he'll ask them and I'll answer them. So I'm excited to be here this evening.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And so I do want to say that, Carolyn is a big fan of yours. And so but real quick, thanks to Holly for allowing you to come on tonight. I know it's 8:00 where you're at, and so it's a little bit later for you. But I do mine at 7, and I try to keep a schedule to help people plan. So thanks to you and Holly for that. So, all right, awesome. Well, Sergeant Major, I know you gave a quick brief of where you're at and who you are, but I want to ask this question. I want to know, and our audience wants to know, please tell us, who is Dan Dailey? What are your interests? What are your hobbies? What are your passions in life? Not SMA stuff, but Dan Dailey.
Yeah. Dan Dailey is just a kid that grew up in a small town in northeastern Pennsylvania. If you went up north of Allentown and south of Scranton and you drove around what is called the Poconos and got lost, you'd probably be in my hometown. It's a real small place. It was originally a steel town, just like many of those up there in the Northeast, and grew up a pretty poor kid. Both my parents were hardworking. My father was in the service, and he always talked to us at a young age about how proud he was to serve and how much it made an impact on his life. Played high school sports throughout entire high school and junior high school. Basketball, I was on a state championship team. I wasn't that good, but we were kind of like Hoosiers. There was like 7 of us on the senior team, and the whole town kind of followed us to the game. It was a pretty nice place to live. I spent my whole time as a child with dreams of getting out of that hometown. And I spent my whole adult life trying to get back. And that's exactly what I did. After I retired, I went back to that hometown. But away from the Army stuff, Dan Dailey is a woodworker. I picked it up a long time ago, been building a wood shop for the better part of 25 years. I've got a pretty nice wood shop now back up there in northeastern Pennsylvania. I do a lot of crafts for my wife, and she's actually calling my bluff on all the things I said, well, I can make that. We don't need to buy that thing. I'm making those things now. Those of you that did get the opportunity to come visit me as the Sergeant Major of the Army on Fort Myer, I'm also a beekeeper. I actually started a bee and apiary on Fort Myer. That was not a good discussion to have with the garrison commander, but he allowed it. And I do that. And I found passion. And there's a long story. Well, not a long story, but a short story on how that happened. I kind of came into it, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I like everything outdoors, hunting and fishing and spending time with my family. So, but I'm just an average guy. Nobody special. Just hardworking kid that grew up from a family that raised us with not money but principles, and taught us to respect others. Don't take anything you don't earn in life, and if you expect something, expect to work hard for it.
Well, Sergeant Major, that's a great story, and I think most of us watching can relate a little bit to that. Growing up in a maybe not so great family monetarily wise and being able to get to where you're at. So, I mean, it's just great to hear that story, because especially from someone like me who kind of traversed the same pattern to get to where we're at, is just amazing. So thanks so much for really telling us who is Dan Dailey. And so there's a question from, this is one of my lieutenants here on the installation. And she's our ACFT guru, getting after it. So I met this young lieutenant. She hosted a Monday ACFT train up to allow us to practice and teach us how to improve our ACFT. And next thing you know, one day, of course, I'm the installation sergeant major, and I show up and she's like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "Look, I'm just a normal person. I want to get better on the ACFT. So please help me out." And so her question today from you, sir, Sergeant Major, is, I think you answered a little bit, but what are you doing to enjoy retirement?
Well, I'll tell you a lot. Bike riding. I'm still getting after it every day. This morning, I ran 6.5 miles in DC and maintained my social distancing. But where I live up in northeastern Pennsylvania, it is open roads and beautiful scenery now that it's starting to get warmer. I'm also a skier. I'm fortunate to have a brother that is the chief operating officer of a ski resort about 4 minutes from my house. Maybe part of the reason why I moved back to Pennsylvania, but it was really family. And a lot of outdoor activities. I'm a busy guy. I can't sit down. I'm always up doing something and working. Try to eat right every day, and I'm trying to live life to the fullest now.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And I really want to throw a quick shout out to your battle buddy, Sergeant Major retired Troy Welch, who's watching. So Sergeant Major, thanks so much for tuning in and watching this tonight. And I forgive him that he's a 49er fan, but I'll leave it at that. So
yeah, we often have to do that.
No, I think maybe that's why my wife really enjoys you, SMA, is because she is a huge 49er fan and she's watching right now. So to you and Carolyn, go 49ers. So anyway, I'd like to move on real quick. Sergeant SMA is our current training and doctrine commanding general Funk. He has, first of all, he has a way with talking to folks. But number one is, when he first came on board, he started this thing, which I tried to do the same thing with many folks. And that is, when a coin presentation or some other type of recognition is, hey, you have to tell us, why did you join and what made you continue to serve? So SMA, why did you join? And why did you continue to serve for 30 plus years?
Yeah, serving. Well, I alluded to it earlier. My father served right around the Vietnam era. His brother was already in Vietnam, and he felt it was his duty and responsibility to do that. And from as early as I can remember, I remember our father talking about what a great time he had in the Army and how he regretted getting out and coming home. And he didn't regret falling in love with my mother and having us, but he said, man, if he could, he'd go back and do it again. And he just tells these great stories about being stationed in Germany and the great times he had, even in the short time that he was in the Army. You know, and where I'm from, raised as a young, poor kid in northeastern Pennsylvania in the 70s and 80s, when I came to the point where I was graduating high school, there's really three options. It was coal mine, moonshine, or move on down the line. And I didn't have the money to go to college. I was already inspired to serve our country, so it was the right fit for both me and my oldest brother, with the intent to serve, come home, and go to school and, you know, make a life for myself near my hometown somewhere. Which gets to the second part of your question, is why did I stay? It's largely because of one person. I was the very fortunate young brand new private that went to their first unit. I was placed in the squad that had by far the best squad leader in the battalion. I mean, it wasn't just my own self-assessment or his. It was literally that of everybody around. Staff Sergeant Davis was the guy. And he molded and shaped us from day one. I mean, everything I did all the way up until the day I stopped being the 15th Sergeant of the Army, I'd ask myself, what would Staff Sergeant Davis do? Because he was just the morally correct example of what right looked like on a day-to-day basis. And when my 2 years was up, because I was just a 2-year soldier, I was sitting in the quad. I remember this day in vivid color. I'm sitting there, and Staff Sergeant Davis walked up, and back in those days, I had what was called a retention card. And he said, hey, you know, your window to re-enlist is coming up. And I didn't hate the Army. I was just doing what I was supposed to do. Just come serve my country, get a little bit of college money, go home. And he looked at me and said, I think you'd make a great non-commissioned officer. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to send you to PLDC. And so I went, and I was the Distinguished Honor grad and Distinguished Leadership grad. And it was from history there. I remember calling my father in Germany one night and say, Dad, I think I'm going to give this a go. And he says, sounds great. Why don't you re-enlist? And then the story just goes on from there. You continue to fall in love. And at that point, I knew this was for me. I knew this was my calling. And there was no looking back after that.
Wow, that's great. It sounds like my story and a lot of others, I'm sure. And what's really funny is it kind of leads into a question that just popped up on the board from Michael Shibley. And sorry, wrong one. There we go. He says, what advice can you give those junior enlisted soldiers who are thinking about leaving the military?
Well, I would tell you first and foremost, and this is what I've told every soldier: if you think you're going to leave the military, have a plan. And if you don't, your backup plan should be the military. If you love it, stay. If you don't, then maybe you should find something else to do. But here's what I can assure you. The Army gives opportunity like no other organization in this country. I'm a perfect example. And there's so many out there, like you said, Sergeant Major, there's so many great examples out there of giving opportunity to young men and women who want to give to the organization. The Army's the one that's going to give back. And every single time you PCS, you get a new slate and you wipe it clean and you get to start again. And it's there for the taking for people who want to excel. Not everybody's going to win everything, right? But you can gosh darn try. And the Army is a great opportunity to try and work really hard to be somebody. That's what I would tell them.
Yeah, no, that's great, Sergeant Major. And so real quickly, I will tell you, so my story, I signed up from El Paso, Texas with the intent to, sign up to be a military police officer, do my 4 or 5 years that I enlisted for, and to get out and go be a police officer in El Paso. And I will tell people all the time, what made me choose to stay was the people. I fell in love with the people, the culture of the Army, the culture of being on a team, the way they treated us, the way they took care of us, the way they provided us opportunities. I started college. Of course, I met my beautiful wife. I mean, there are just so many things that kind of push me to say, you know what, I'm going to re-enlist. I'm not going to go back to El Paso. So thanks for sharing that story. I've never heard it from you personally, and it's an honor for me to hear it from you directly. So thank you so much, SMA. So, all right. So the heartbeat of every soldier in the military, no doubt, 100% is our families. And that's what I want to talk about next. And of course, I got a chance earlier to say hello to Holly on the screen, but SMA, I want you to please give us a few minutes and tell us about your family. Tell us about your wife. Tell us about your son. How long have you been married? And then I have a couple other questions keyed up, but let's start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I am blessed, and I mean that. I am married to my starter wife. She hates when I say that in front of soldiers, but it's true. For 27 years, she's from my hometown. We were not hometown sweethearts, though. But I did know her for the better part of my younger years growing up. The little secret is that almost no one knows inside the Army is that she was my best friend's older sister. And it just wouldn't have worked out because of the age difference while we were in school. But there was never anything there. I actually joined the Army, never had a relationship with my wife. Real quick story. I came home PCSing after Desert Storm. I hadn't been home in 3 years. My dad said, hey, let's go fishing. I said, let's go pick up my best friend. I walked in the house and my future bride was standing there and gave me the hug. And from that instant, and I'm being honest, from that instant, I knew I was in love. We were married a few weeks later, and it's lasted 27 wonderful years.
Wow. Sergeant Major, I think that's, again, I keep hating to say this, but I think maybe, again, that's why my wife loves you so much, because we're married for 27 years too, and our story is very similar, and we only knew each other for about 4 months before we got married. So that's awesome, SMA. Thank you so much for sharing that. But here's a question that I get asked a lot about how do we do it? How can you and I be married for 27 years through the military, through deployments and all that stuff? SMA, tell us, what are some of your keys to success to a strong, successful marriage?
Yeah, it's not all rose petals in the Dailey family. I'll be honest with you.
That's true.
It takes hard work. And, I think, again, I was raised by a family that had strong morals. My mother, from as young as I can remember, was very profound on us going to church on Sundays and have respect for people, and us getting married in the church when that time came. And I do honestly believe that the marriage is until death do you part. And it takes hard work. It takes hard work from both parties, especially in the business that you and I are in or was in. As you said, 5 deployments. I think my wife and my son, we counted up the time one time. In the total time that I was in service, we were not together for 7 years.
Wow.
That's a pretty significant gap, being away from the family. But I'll tell you, you can make it work. I used to tell command teams, spouses and their military members, when they came to Leavenworth each month with the chief of staff of the Army, because that question comes up: how do you make it work? How do you balance your time? And I said, hey, let's not hide the truth. You have to sacrifice, and the most important thing is you have to accept that the Army's your life. I see so many people get frustrated because they can't do this or can't do this. Hey, that new beginning, that PCS move is a brand new chapter in your life. And the day that you and your wife accept that this is your life and you're going to make the best of it, no matter where you are, as long as you're together, then it works. It just works. And the other thing we did every single night, we made a vow when we were very young. I remember this, is that we would never go to bed mad at each other. Now, there were some late nights trying to work some stuff out. All right, to be very honest.
I'm sure.
But we never went to bed mad, and it worked. And you got to reconnect with your spouse, even at 27 years. You got to do it continuously, because my wife used to stress on, it's not the quantity of time, because you're not going to have it in the military. It's the quality of time, and you got to figure out how to reconnect. One of the funnest things we did when I became a sergeant major is we went to the class the chaplain was offering on the 5 love languages. I'm not going to spoil for anybody if you've had it. It's awesome, I know, but if you haven't, give it a try. It's a pretty good deal. But I am proud to say that I'm married to my wife for 27 years, and we've had a wonderful wife and raised a wonderful son.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I'm very proud of it too. And I think that Sergeant Major SMA, I think that we could say that, we're good role models for a lot of the younger folks, because, a lot of the questions that I get asked by our young and up and coming warriors is, how do you survive with a marriage, in the military? And I think you answered it perfectly. And it comes down to communication. And so one of the things that I talk about, so I have this top 10 thoughts on the art and science of leadership. And I think number 5 is having work balance, right? Having work and family life balance. And there is no equal balance. There's no every day it's 60% family and 40%, work, or vice versa, or whatever. At the end of the day, it boils down to this: expectations, making sure your family understands if you're going to work late, you're going to work late. But when you are home, be there for them. Be there, spend quality time, not just show up and sit at the kitchen table and eat dinner and be on your phone. Actually engage in conversation. So really what you said was really eye-opening to me, because it just knows that what I'm telling my folks as I'm talking to them, that I'm telling them kind of the same thing that most people think. So thanks for that, SMA.
Or don't spend the whole night running podcasts.
Well, my wife allows me to do this once every 2 weeks, and she understands that. And so that's my one thing. So she knows it's my passion to try to teach, coach, and mentor. And if I can do it virtually. And SMA, I was talking to someone the other day. I said, as you know, before he retired, SMA retired Preston came out to Fort Leonard Wood. We invited him out here with the help of Rick Morris, our 5th Region AUSA president.
Great man, by the way. Rick's a great man.
Great man, absolutely. And I know he's watching, so big shout out to Rick for all that you do for me and the great mentorship that you give me. But we hosted an NCODP in our Abrams Theater, And SMA, I'm telling you, I've never seen we had cars everywhere. There was probably 400 or 500 NCOs that jam packed that auditorium or that theater for SMA Preston.
Yeah.
But just think about it, SMA. What I could do in that 1 hour in Abrams Theater, I can quadruple it with what we're doing now.
So it was just a joke, but actually, I wanted to make a point of it. You got to have special time for yourself too.
Yeah.
You got to have a hobby. If you don't have something to get your mind off of every other stress in your life, do podcasts. I recommend beekeeping if you're not allergic to bees, because you're going to get stung. I promise you. But you have to find something. And I used to do that even when I was a Sergeant of the Army. Is an hour a day. An hour a day. I used to take my mind off of the troubles of the world and 1.2 million soldiers. And that's not selfish. It's important to reset it. So good on you. I know. Good on you.
So one of my dear friends, a Sergeant Major recently retired, Jason Van Cleet. He always talks about weapons maintenance on your brain, and it's doing those things that make you happy. Absolutely. And this is one of those things for me, is to be able to do these things and maybe make a small impact on a few folks. So anyway, tonight is not about me. Tonight's about you. So I want to get into the biggest question that I've been waiting to ask you, because every single soldier, and I even had it today, I had a young staff sergeant who sat before us at the Sergeant Audie Murphy Association board today, who her long-term goal was to be an SMA. And so, Sergeant Major, SMA, selection as the 15th SMA, what happened? What went through your mind, your head, your feelings after selection, the extreme weight that was going to be placed on your shoulders when you got that phone call from the Chief of Staff of the Army and said, Sergeant Major, you're my man. I'm selecting you. Congratulations. You're the 15th SMA. What went through your head? Because I can't even imagine and fathom, because all of us dream to get that phone call one day.
And Sergeant Major, you're right. If you're a soldier and you don't have a dream of being a Sergeant Major of the Army, you're either not telling the truth or there's something wrong, right? I mean, that's what you want to be. And that's not necessarily what I'm saying. I was aspiring or trying to be the entire time. It actually didn't even become a possibility in my mind until I was the TRADOC Sergeant Major. But fast forward to that moment that you just described, after you're through the process, which is very long and deliberate. There's a very long and deliberate process. And trust me, there's a filter mechanism designed to make sure that the person we put in there as a Sergeant Major of the Army is a good representative of the wonderful force we call the United States Army. So for me, I was sitting in the Chief of Staff of the Army's office. There was 5 of us that made it to the kind of the final 5. That's kind of the norm. There's a process that weeds us down to that point. And you get called in at no specific order. You're asked not to talk to anybody, obviously. And he sits down and he looks me in the face and says, so what do you think about being the Sergeant Major of the Army? And I said, sir, it'd be a tremendous honor. He said, okay, you are. And at that instant, in that moment in my life, it was the most sobering moment you could possibly imagine. Of course, you're excited. But the way I described it to people in the past, if you're a parent and you're getting ready to have a child and it comes up and, it's all the excitement and fear and everything involved in it. And the day your spouse gives birth to that child and you hold your child for the first time and you realize, man, I got to grow up. I'm a father. It is like this awesome responsibility of, whoa, I actually am the Sergeant Major of the Army now. So I got to grow up. This stuff matters now. This is like the big show, right? And then you quickly realize that you do have an awesome responsibility, not to necessarily yourself, but to every single soul that's out there, because everything you say, everything you do is a reflection on all of those young men and women that work so hard every single day. And you can quickly mess it up. Somebody asked me right after I gave over the helm to the 16th SMA, who's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Sergeant Major of the Army. I'm a huge fan of him, and I do podcasts with him all the time. And they said to me, so what do you think? How'd you do? I said, well, that's not for me to decide. That's for soldiers to decide. I said, but I didn't get fired. So in that business, that's a good thing. So it's surreal. It is humbling. but it's a little scary, and it's very sobering, and it's very maturing, very fast, and you realize that you're the person now. You got the nice office and thing, but there is a level of responsibility there that no one other than the Sergeant Major of the Army can describe, because it's an incredible responsibility, but also a very incredible, humbling, honorable experience. Yeah.
SMA, thank you so much for that. That was such a great insight. And that's what I was hoping to get from you by asking you that question. And because I can even imagine, number one, the feelings that you had to be selected, and then knowing the ultimate responsibility that was going to be placed on your shoulders for the time that you were going to be the SMA. Just from my personal perspective of, my certain selections that I've had in my career. And it's overwhelming at first, because you're like, you don't feel worthy enough to be selected to a position like that. But then you get into that position and then you give it your 100%, or as Sergeant Major Gooden, who is a great mentor of mine, you give it your 110% every day, right, and really to make a difference. And SMA, you said it, a second ago about how, you can't say if you did good or whatever, that the soldiers will determine it. From an old soldier and many of the folks that I talked about, you did great. Thumbs up from all of us. You did a great job. Fantastic. I know it wasn't easy. There's a lot of rough roads, but on behalf of majority, I'm sure there are some few folks out there that maybe didn't think you did, but for majority of us, you did a fantastic job, and we're very pleased to have you as our 15th SMA. And we know that our 16th jumped right in. He jumped right in and is just knocking targets down. And what an amazing selection by our Army to select Sergeant Major SMA Grinston. So anyway, all right. So real quick, before I get into my next question, because I want to talk about your time, and we're going to try to roll it all up in a few seconds. But before we talk about your highlights, I have a question that came up from a master sergeant out at Fort Leavenworth, and it has nothing to do with our podcast tonight, but I think it's a great question because you really might have some insight on what it is. And he's asking you, sir, some advice for the Sergeant Major Academy students that are going to go for Class 71 post-COVID. What do you think some of the challenges are going to be facing this new operating environment?
Well, I'll tell you, first and foremost, if you tune into my podcast that I just released with the Commandant, Command Sergeant Major Jimmy Sellers, he talks about that and how it's going to operate. But I'll give you a little hint, all right? Because I don't want to spoil it. I'm trying to get you to go check out my podcast at AUSA.org. But first and foremost, my advice is don't take the Sergeant Major Academy lightly. We've worked very hard, the entire team, for several years to raise the academic equivalency and, to be honest, to make it tougher, more challenging. Why? Because that's what's demanded of our senior non-commissioned officers that graduate from there. And that's the type of rigor that is required to get the academic equivalency we need in order for it to produce a degree. You got to stay on top of your work. You got to be on top of it. And if this continues, this pandemic and our social distancing continues, they're well equipped to be able to deliver the same level of education that you would receive in class online. And they've been able to do that for several years. So it was a pretty seamless transition for the Sergeant Major Academy. They've invested heavily for the last several years, and TRADOC has, updating their systems, and they're going to deliver to you a quality education experience, whether that's in a classroom or whether that's in a digital environment. Now, we all know we're the human species. We're herding animals. We want to be together by nature, right? And I'll promise you, this is going to get better with time. My level of confidence for us finding a vaccine is at 100%. It is. It's just going to take some time, right? Number two, do not fall victim to El Paso, okay? As the Sergeant Major of the Army, every single person that I had to remove from the Sergeant Major Academy, and actually the Commandant does it, I don't, but he calls me up and says, I had to drop two more. Two primary reasons. One, failure of APFT or ACFT, right? And two, a compass correction off their moral compass that they couldn't come back off of, okay? If you have the opportunity, take your family. That's something Mrs. Dailey and I did everywhere we went. It's hard, I get it. You got to pull the kids out. You got to put them in another school. You got to do those things. Keep the family together. Stay focused on your studies. You're there for a reason. to get a world-class education to go back to be the senior enlisted soldier in an organization. It's not time to goof off. It's time to get educated, get smart, and get back out to the fight.
No, yeah, that's great advice. And that's the same advice that I would give many of my leaders is go there, do great, focus hard, study, take your family, enjoy the little bit of time that you'll have with them, and stay out of trouble.
Stay out of trouble.
That's right. So real quick, I have another question that popped up. So SMA last week or a couple weeks ago, we did a broadcast with all the Sergeant Artie Murphy Association, and I had Master Sergeant Brett Anderson on. And so now he's talking about, while all soldiers have a hand in molding our leadership styles, where do you think you grew the most as a leader, working with great soldiers or the disgruntled ones? This is a great question, actually.
Yeah, very good. I'll tell you, it's a balance. Obviously, you feed off of your highly motivated soldiers. They push leaders to be better. And then it's just an evolving cycle when you build it. I used to say all the time that the most infectious thing in an organization is not indiscipline, it's esprit de corps. When you build an organization that's highly productive and it finally figures out that it is an organization that homogeneously functions as a cog in the wheel and that's just working so hard, you can see it. You can see it. And then other organizations around see it. And you hear soldiers say, man, I want to be part of them. And that is very healthy to the leader development process, extremely healthy. But I can tell you, I learned a lot of leadership lessons from my trouble soldiers, right? Now, probably in areas that I otherwise would not have needed if I no longer had trouble soldiers, but it made me do one thing, and it's part of my top 10, is be more informed and less emotional. All of us think we're pretty good. And you know what? A little bit of that is actually what we want in a soldier, right? We're all kind of type A personality people. But I'll tell you, the trouble soldiers made me stop and think about what is the right thing to do. It made me suppress my emotion, the number one reason why leaders are fired in the United States Army, whether that emotion is falling in love with a young PFC in the organization or whether it's doing something morally wrong, usually correcting a deficiency of some sort. But it made me slow down my pace on my emotion, increase my intelligence level on the issue or concern, and I realized that when I started doing that, and of course, this took time. When I was a young sergeant, it was the smoke session. I probably shouldn't say that. I think I'm past the statute of limitations on this stuff, though. But later on, you realize, you can use a whole lot more tactics. I fell in love with the 5 types of power. They used to actually teach it in PLDC. They don't anymore. But if you haven't read those, and there's a couple versions out there on the internet, but they all largely the same, take a look at that. And I really started molding myself to use the balance of power. All right. And examples of that, like reverent power, reward power, professional power. And you don't just need to be authoritarian all the time to get people to do things. And when I started suppressing my emotion, increasing my intelligence, it started changing my leadership style. And of course, it naturally changes as you mature. When you go from level to level, as well as your level of responsibility increases. I really think I started to change the way I lead as a platoon sergeant. And then as a first sergeant, there isn't a first sergeant out there that won't tell you that they didn't change their leadership style when they took over a company, which was by far my most rewarding leadership experience in the Army. I always said, if I could go back to being first sergeant, I would do it in a minute. Now, if I could keep the great SMA pay in the office and the access to airplanes and stuff, that would be cool. But I would go back and be a first sergeant for a minute. But that's a couple little tidbits about how I learned from both. Right, good soldiers maybe thrive and strive for more excellence and find a way to be better every single day. And when I had trouble soldiers, it helped me work through challenges and figure out ways to creatively fix those challenges.
Yep, no, absolutely, and that is so true, because so many leaders will tell you, you learn from the good and you learn from the bad about how not to be. And SMA, I'm right with you. I tell you, my leadership style is based primarily on all those great leaders that I've watched and said, you know what? And then the bad leaders be like, hey, I'm never doing that. I'm never going to be like that. So thank you very much for that insight, SMA. Appreciate that. All right. So there's a question that I'm going to pop up from Mark Halliburton here in a second, but it's going to be the reverse of what I'm going to ask you first. The first thing is that I want to ask you, SMA, what is your biggest highlight, or maybe one or two? It's up to you. But what is your biggest highlight as the SMA?
Oh gosh, I mean, they're, being the Sergeant of the Army is a very fulfilling and rewarding experience. I think the most rewarding experience is when we finally, after about 5 years of work, handed the first degree to a graduating student at the Sergeant Major Academy.
Wow.
There was just so many great people involved in that process. But I can't tell you, I bet you I had a better than 50 to 60 visits to Capitol Hill to work on that, while Command Sergeant Major Jimmy Sellers was working all the intricacies of certifying instructors, and I can't tell you about all the great oars in the water that were rowing to get that done. The first enlisted academy in the world that issued a bachelor degree. It was very fulfilling for me, and it was something I said I wanted to accomplish before I left the office. There's a lot of things that you want to do as a Sergeant Major of the Army. The reality is your clock starts the day you take over, and you're just not going to get them all done. And that's okay. The great thing about when I left is I got replaced by a phenomenal soldier. And he had worked with me all the way up until the day I left as Sergeant of the Army as the Force Comm Sergeant Major. And all those ideas are never my own. They were put together by what we call the Senior Enlisted Council. So he was well versed on all the things we were working. He was on the team because that's the way we led the Army, is not by one individual SMA. It was a collective team of what was right for the entire organization. And it's very comforting when you hand that ball, he's going to tuck it in and he's going to run it across the goal line. Now he's going to put his own stamp on it, and rightly so, right? And that stamp might be different than the 15th Sergeant of the Army. That's why we have numbers, right? So there's 15 and then there's 16, and that's okay. But there's so much I could talk about. We could write a whole book on the rewarding experiences I have. And I think on a daily thing, the most rewarding thing I got to do is eat an MRE with a soldier on a rucksack in the field. Sometimes just normalcy is really good for you, even as the Sergeant Major of the Army. And I would break away from all the fanfare, get away from the chief, and him and I were very close, so there's no indication of me wanting to be away from him. I would say, boss, I got it. I'm really PowerPointed out. I know that, being here at the headquarters in Afghanistan is important, listening to this brief, but I'm going to go find a helicopter and I'm going to go find a soldier. And when you sit and talk to them like you're their battle buddy, first and foremost, they'll tell you pretty much anything. And then you really sleep good at night thinking, man, I got to connect with the most important asset in this organization. That on a daily basis was very rewarding for me. And it doesn't get to happen every day, because you do got to be in the halls of Congress. You got to be in the Pentagon. You got to be working policy. And you got to balance your time between your family, all those other things, and the soldiers. But when you do get out there, that's very rewarding. So that was a very, very welcome treat on a regular basis, as much as I could, to just get out there and not in front of the town halls. You're still kind of being the SMA, but just to have a conversation with soldiers and really hearing the ground truth.
No, I think we need that as senior leaders. First of all, we need that every now and then to get back to where we're at. In my top 10, because I didn't mirror your top 10. I came up with my own, but I kind of did my own top 10.
Now it's copyrighted. So
yeah. It's not mine. Is not yours. Mine is mine. You can't Google it. It's not copyrighted. But my number 10, and I always tell them there's no rank order, but my number 10, but most important to me, never forget where you came from. Right. Always remember that you were once the trainee sleeping in a pup tent with another 6 foot, 200-pound guy sleeping in that little canopy. If you never forget that, then you're going to be okay. So I think you talking about having an MRE with a soldier kind of alludes to that. So, well, yeah. SMA, thanks for that. And I kind of knew that was going to be your highlight, but I will tell you, from a soldier out in the field, I think, and now that is a huge highlight. There's no doubt about that. Issuing a college degree to our sergeant majors graduating. But I think my number one highlight that you accomplished, not you particularly by yourself with the team, of course, but what the team accomplished under your helm was the Army Credentialing Assistance Program. To be able to provide, and of course I did a podcast on it with Sophia Sweeney and Teresa Duncan and such, but you're able to provide soldiers to use their tuition assistance dollars, and it just became effective 1 January 2020, that they can get a credential for whatever they want to do. For instance, I don't know if she's watching, but Staff Sergeant Victoria Bain, she's a military science instructor out in Florida at one of the universities. And after that podcast, she came up on the net and she says, you know, I've always wanted to be a paramedic, and I'm going to go after my paramedic credentialing. And for what you did for that SMA is, yes, the Sergeant Major, the Academy gives a degree for those folks that go, but what you did for the entire enlisted population, for the entire United States Army, is to give us an opportunity that some of us maybe don't want to go to college and get a degree. We just want to go be a barber and get our air conditioning certification, to get out and go work with dad at his air conditioning thing. So I'm not trying to trump your number one. I'm sure you don't have a number one or number two.
Yeah.
But that's my thought process on that SMA. So
yeah, no, and I appreciate it. Again, something that years worth of work. It's hard to describe the number of people involved in that.
Yeah.
Again, the amount of legislative work that had to be done, because those are all bills that have to be presented to Congress and passed. And you're exactly right. I think and I got to be careful because I'm not downplaying degrees, but we have somewhat oversold to America's youth that if you don't go to college, you're not going to be anything good. That's not true. There's great occupations out there. And as a matter of fact, my son is an aerospace engineer because he spent 6 years in school, become an engineer. And believe it or not, you can make the same amount of money in the first year being a plumber in America. Those are good occupations with good salaries, and all that requires a certification. And shame on us for not doing that in the past. And shame on us for not credentialing soldiers in their military occupational skill. But we got it done. So
absolutely. Right. And here's the great piece with that SMA is you take a credential, and then you take the career skills program as the soldier is transitioning from the Army. Right. They get a credential to work on those big giant turbine windmills, and then they get out and they go work or shadow or with the career skills program for a company and does it and gets a job. So not only do we solve our unemployment problem, but we gave a soldier a career, and he's going to be a soldier for life. How perfect is that? And you and your team provided that SMA. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
So now we're going to turn the clock a little bit because I have a question that's teamed up from Sergeant Major Mark Halliburton out in Fort Leavenworth. Mm-hmm. And this is something that we have to talk about because not everything is rosy in our careers, in our lives. So he wants to know, what was your biggest disappointment or biggest thing that you had in your career that maybe you wish you can change or maybe didn't happen or, yeah.
You know, to be very honest with you, I had a lot of tough days. I mean, it's not all rosy. Never a bad one though. I actually don't have a regret. I'm not saying I didn't make any mistakes. I didn't have a perfect path. I don't have any regrets. I go back and I do it all again because the things that I did make mistakes on, they're probably necessary for my growth, to be very honest with you. And they're probably unavoidable. I never got a DUI. I never did drugs because I used to tell people, you know how you don't get DUIs? You don't drink and drive. I actually, to this day, don't have a speeding ticket. Now, listen, I'm not the goody two-shoe guy. I'm not, I said, but I don't speed. That's why I don't have a speeding ticket. So I honestly, I think what drove me to that is what drove me to get up every morning and do PT is the SMA. And what it was is I felt as if I was going to let somebody down. Now, I know there's a lot of great leaders out there that made mistakes. And I'm not saying that you have to run the perfect path to be a great leader. You don't. I do believe in forgiving. I do. And some of the best soldiers I've led have made mistakes and have risen above them. And you can, all right? But there are some things that you can't come back off of. I think the toughest days for me were looking family members in the eyes, and as a result of loss of soldiers, especially the ones that were serving under me in Iraq, extremely hard. I mean, extremely hard to this day. As you know, it is reality that I spent more time with them in that period than I did with my own child. You become a mother and father to them, and you got to be the disciplinary, right? But you also have a bond, a connection, especially those who serve together in combat, that is unbreakable. That's why you see these older gentlemen in VFWs to the day they die talking about their war stories. It's because it's an incredible bond, and humans bond in the face of adversity. And then you ask yourself all the time if you could have done something better. If you could go back and do it again, or did we have to go on that mission? Was it that important? And it's a tough choice, right? And you always say that you want to do what's best for the organization and for your soldiers, and you go every day with thinking that you did. But if I have one regret, I wish I could have brought everybody home.
Hello, Sergeant Major. Well, that is definitely heartwarming, because I think we all of us that have served downrange and have lost a brother or sister, we can all relate to that. So, okay, great. Thanks, Sergeant Major. Appreciate it. And so anyway, I want to quickly transition from SMA Dailey to who you are in your current position. I have a lot of passions in life, and one of them is about organizations, professional organizations. I belong to many of them that I personally believe in. And tonight is really the big one that I wanted to talk to you about. And that is, you are Dan Dailey, the Vice President of NCO and Soldier Programs for the Association of the United States Army. And so what I want to do is educate some folks a little bit about what is AUSA. So I'm going to give you the mic for a few minutes, SMA, if you can tell us what is AUSA.
Yeah. If I could, Sergeant Major, I'd like to tell you why. Why am I here first? I think it's a big part of the story and helps define what AUSA is.
Please do this, man.
I left to being the Sergeant Major of the Army utterly fulfilled in life. And I thought I'd be a sergeant someday when I joined the Army, and that was going to make Dad proud. And that's all I really cared about doing, was making my family proud and serving my country. And I'll tell you that I went home to my hometown, and I started the honey-do list, built my wife an extension on the house. Literally, I was the carpenter, the electrician, the plumber, and the phone rang. And it was retired Sergeant Major of the Army, Ken Preston. And he said, Dan, he goes, General Ham would like to talk to you. And I said, well, why? He said, to think about come working for AUSA. I said, Ken, you work for AUSA. I said, you're the 13th Sergeant of the Army. We don't do this to each other, right? He goes, no. He said, I think I'm going to transition. I said, he goes, it's time for me. And we want to keep the organization new, just like we do the Army. We want to transition leaders on a regular basis. So General Ham asked me to come down to DC and have dinner with him at his house, which I accepted. And he told me he'd like me to join the team. And the answer was really easy. As a matter of fact, my wife said, well, what did they offer you? I said, I have no idea, but I took the job. That is an honest God truth. Yeah. I had no idea. And I took the job because I told myself, to be very honest, there's a lot of people that will throw a lot of money at you after you're the Sergeant Major of the Army. That is the complete honest truth, right? And I made it. I found out really quickly that they didn't want Dan Dailey. They wanted the 15th Sergeant Major of the Army,
right?
And they wanted me to sell stuff to soldiers and do those things. And I told myself, I can't do that. I can't do that. That's not what soldiers would expect of me. That's not why they gave me the honor of serving this position. And when this came, General David Perkins, who was my commander twice, gave me great advice, and it came true. He said, you can get a job, Sergeant Major. He said, but the great job will find you. And it did. AUSA is an organization that has a reputation that is phenomenal for 70 years. Actually, this year, it's an organization that is profound in its word and its deed, and it has done everything it needs to do to support the Army in every way, shape, and form it can, and it has done it phenomenally throughout history. But you asked, what is it? So the Association of the United States Army, first fact, because I'm a history major, was actually born by the Army 70 years ago out of need, absolute need, right? So we need an organization that's representative of the Army, that can say the things and do the things that the Army can't, and be the voice for the United States Army. And the first director was active duty 3-star general. And then several years later, they separated it from the United States Army. And today we are a nonprofit education professional development association that serves America's Army and supports a strong national defense. Right? We provide a voice for the Army, support the soldier, and honor those who have served in order to advance the security of the nation. And our biggest mission, what we do is we educate those we serve, we inform our members and Congress and the American people, and we connect America's total Army to its industry partners, our community partners. And the real beauty of the Association of the United States Army is its 9 regions and 122 chapters. These are men and women who, many of which served before, but many of which have not, that live in communities all across the country and abroad and run our chapters and connect communities throughout America with the United States Army. And they do it for free. They're all volunteers. Yeah. They're all hardworking Americans with their own occupation, their own lives and children and things to do. And they devote countless hours of time taking care of our soldiers every single day. You guys have a great chapter out there that is strong and vibrant because of great people like Rick Morris and his team.
That's right.
And they do a lot of things behind the scenes, and many people will never know about them. And that's not why they're there. They're there to serve soldiers, but they are the hidden heroes. They're the secret sauce to the Association of the United States Army, out there educating, connecting, informing our communities around the globe about what the Army does and about what soldiers do for them.
Nope, that is well said. And yes, I do want to throw a quick shout out because I know he's watching. We have one of the region presidents online, Rick Morris. So Rick, thanks so much for tuning in. And yes, I am a little bit, to me, for my local chapter here, the Mid-Missouri Ozark chapter, we do a lot of great things. And I'm a proud member of that organization, not only as a senior enlisted advisor from the Fort Leonard Wood, but also as a member to that chapter and the things that we do for our community, but also for big AUSA as well. So I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. And Sergeant Major, if I could add one other thing
too.
Please. When I transitioned out of the Army, I opened my closet up and I realized that the only thing I wear is branded with Army logos. What better organization to join? I didn't have to buy any new clothes. Every shirt fits. It all just fits. It works. I can wear it to work and I can still be recognized. Yeah. So
and I want that's exactly right. And I want everybody to know me and the SMA did not pre-coordinate the color of shirts that we were going to wear. We completely did this on our own. But hey, Dallas Cowboy Blue. I mean, what can I say? So, all right, SMA, real quick. So we have a lot of enlisted soldiers watching. There's a whole bunch watching right now. Yeah. And some of them may or may not be AUSA members. So I'd like to give you the floor for a second to please help me to get to the point is, why should I, as an enlisted soldier, care about AUSA?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first and foremost, a lot of our soldiers out there don't know about AUSA. I was talking to some soldiers right before this pandemic hit, and they said, "Oh yeah, I know what AUSA is. I have insurance with them." I said, "No, that's USAA." So I think what we have to do as an organization is first educate our soldiers. What I don't want to tell soldiers is become a member of AUSA. Of course, I want soldiers to be members of AUSA, but I want soldiers to understand the value proposition of being a member of AUSA. And I think it's our job as leaders in the Army and community members and chapters out there to educate them on what AUSA does for its members, what it does for the Army, what it does for the community, and how it supports everything that we do. And just a couple tidbits on that. First and foremost, we're the Army's voice. We're up here on DC on Capitol Hill representing what the Secretary and the Chief of Staff and the Sergeant of the Army need us to represent, say the things they need us to say. We stay in direct contact with them every week, as you can see. And I know we're going to talk about it. I do podcasts with the Sergeant of the Army. I just did a noon report with him, trying to get his themes out. We support the Sergeant of the Army, the Chief, and the Secretary's initiatives. If they need help with something, if they want an initiative, we help support those things through resources. We connect the Army with our industry partners, helping find innovative solutions to the resource and requirements they need to stay on the forefront of our adversaries' capabilities. There's so many things we do, but on a soldier level, we provide all kinds of education opportunities, all kinds of affinity program opportunities for our young soldiers. We provide distribution of things like the Army Magazine. AUSA publishes that. Things like Soldier Today. All these great professional education venues for our young soldiers out there to stay informed and stay connected. And then most importantly, again, back to our regions and our chapters, they're out there in the grassroots working programs for our soldiers that are installations, helping things like what you have passion for, Audie Murphy clubs, and all these great organizations support the efforts of what they're doing on their installations to get after the gaps and seams of things that support our soldiers that the Army necessarily can't do for them. It's not that they don't want to do or they're lacking it. It's the things that we all know that the Army can't do. These organizations step in. These chapters step in at AUSA, and they provide those things for our soldiers and their families.
Nope, that's perfectly said. And so you mentioned, organizations teaming up. So I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to watch this Sergeant Audie Murphy Association broadcast that I did a couple weeks ago, but one of the common themes between the three presidents that I had online was all of their relationships with AUSA. They were all connected with their local AUSA chapter to give back to the community. If it was something like providing support to feed 600 or provide 600 families in the local area a Thanksgiving basket, teaming up with AUSA and the Sergeant Audie Murphy program, or even the BOSS program, teaming up with those organizations just leads to common ground to help the community and help the installation.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, during this recent pandemic, it can't be more clear of the great work being done. We get reports, and obviously all the time, from our chapters out there, and they're doing critical things you don't think about. Elderly people, they can't get out of their homes, right? They can't go to the grocery store. And if they do, think of the risk associated with them doing that. Right. Delivering meals, right? Gathering together things like the Audie Murphy clubs and going shopping for these people. You're sustaining life. And it's incredible things that our chapters do. And there's just a laundry list of things they do on a day-to-day basis that just connect the Army with the community. And that's really one of our core missions.
Absolutely, SMA. So I always tell people when I talk about AUSA, I always give them 4 key things, and I have to write them down because I'm not as smart as you. But so the first thing I always tell what AUSA is about, it's the only professional organization that we have in the U.S. Army. Mm-hmm. Number 2, it's about advocacy. Number 3, it's about networking and local community involvement, which we kind of hit on already. And then the 4th, but not least, is professional and educational benefits. And I will tell you, as a leader, for me, I have developed so much by being a part of this association because I'm always surrounded by senior folks who become my mentors, like Rick Morris or Merle Jones or many other folks that are out there. I get to mentor myself with them. But during your conversation that you just talked about, you mentioned something, and you mentioned Soldier Today. And one of the emails that I get, I don't know what the frequency is, I can't remember, but I always get them, and I always scan through them and read them. And what I love about them is it's a very short, quick email, probably about a 2 to 3 minute read, very simple, but it keeps me updated. So SMA, tell everybody, what is AUSA Soldier Today all about?
Oh, great. First of all, I can't take credit for it. I got to give credit where credit's due here. Soldier Today was developed by Sergeant of the Army Ken Preston, and this is something he handed off to me, but what a wonderful gift that we get to give to our subscribers twice a week. So that's when it comes out, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's put together by the team at NCO Soldier Program. Troy Welsh, you mentioned his name. He's the director. And he has Sergeant Major retired Norma Helmison. She is actually the editor of Soldier Today, so she puts together every week. And of course, the wonderful spouse of another Sergeant Major, Victoria McAdoo, she works in the office as well. We all contribute to it every week. And we try to make it readable, like you said, for soldiers. It's designed to be able to open up on the phone, maybe swipe once or twice, because we know the attention span of many of us out there doesn't go beyond that, right? And it's fun facts, everything from a quote of the day from one of the previous Sergeant of the Armies to a study guide question for the promotion board, to what's a fun fact in history of the Army, or who's the next Sergeant Major being assigned to a nominative position. Right. Or just the other day, we highlighted the fact that it was the memorial of when Sergeant Petrie got his Medal of Honor. All kinds of fun things. Here's what I offer you. If you have an idea, we'll try it. Send it to me. We'll publish it in Soldier Today. If you have something that is bipartisan and in good taste and relates to the Army that you want to publish, send it to me. I'll put it in Soldier Today. We'll highlight it. And it's the same thing. We talk to the Sergeant of the Army's office all the time, their public affairs team. If they have something we want to highlight, everything from Arlington National Cemetery rule changes to great initiatives like This Is My Squad. It's just a fun, easy read that goes out twice a week, that doesn't overload or overburden the email. That's free of charge to a member or not, right? All you have to do is subscribe. And we have a great time, an NCO Soldier Program putting it together and delivering it to our customer base.
Well, that's great. And I'll tell the folks out listening, it's a great email. Let me back up a little bit. It's been a long time. I've been signed up I've been getting it probably since its inception. I forgot. How would someone listening sign up for it?
Well, that's great. And I can tell you right now, we already have over 180,000 subscribers now. So you can be 181 or 182, whatever number we're at. All you have to do is go to AUSA.org. On the main page, right, you're going to see a little drop down that says publications. And you scroll down there, it'll say Soldier Today. You click on it, it'll say subscribe. You click on that thing, it actually brings the email up for you. You type your email address in there and say, just a little note says, I would like to receive Soldier Today. Done. You'll get the next issue on Tuesday or Thursday, whichever is the next day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
AUSA.org. You'll find it. Soldier Today. Mm-hmm.
There it is. It's on the ticker, AUSA.org. And so what I always tell NCOs is you have to find ways to help develop yourself, to make yourself a better leader, better NCO. And it's about education. It's about teaching and coaching and mentoring for yourself sometimes. And this is just another tool. It is not the answer. It's just another tool. So I would encourage all those watching, get on there, sign up for it. You won't regret it. It's twice a week, not that much, and it's a quick read. So thanks, SMA, for that. That was one of the things I wanted to highlight, so appreciate that. Now let me move on to a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is very similar to what we're doing tonight. I call mine Breck Time Broadcast because we always do it with video. But you host, and was started with Sergeant Major of the Army Preston, you host the well, not all the time. There's different hosts, but AUSA has what they call the Army Matters podcast, which I am truly infatuated. I love to look forward to when the next one is coming out. So can you tell us a little bit about what is this AUSA Army Matters podcast about?
Absolutely. And as you know, because you're very passionate about it, podcast, another way to communicate to your audience out there. It's a great, easy listen on the way to work, or to drop into your iPad or iPod or click it down. So Army Matters podcasts are those subjects relevant to our members and our soldiers out there on critical and relevant topics of the day. So like you said, it's not just me. I run the Soldier Today Army Matters podcast. We have Army Real Talk hosted by Nija and a bunch of other great folks at AUSA. Family Voices hosted by our own Patty Brown, thought leaders. And then we do a lot of special editions with people like General Hammond, the Chief of Staff of the Army, or the Secretary of the Army. And of course, a constant repeated offender of the Soldier Day podcast with me is Sergeant Major of the Army Grinston. I give him the mic as frequently as he wants because he's the 16th Sergeant Major of the Army, but normally quarterly. And what we try to do is focus on the hot topics. And we'll even send out a note that says, if you have a question for Sergeant Major of the Army, if you want me to ask him on our podcast, I'll do that. So it's a lot of fun. It's like you said, now that I've done this with you, I think I'm going to have to step my game up a little bit, let's get the background scene going, but we're working that at AUSA. And this is relatively new to the Association of United States Army. But I'm proud to announce that we're doing very well. We're pretty high ranked in the government series. That's where we fall, the government series podcast. And I've been told that, an average download is around 200 per month. To give an example, we've had upwards of 500 when the Sergeant Major of the Army goes on there in the first 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of listeners out there. If you haven't heard them, again, this is a free product from your association. Easy to get. Go again, AUSA.org, go to publications, scroll down the podcast, and you can click on all of them. They're all in there for free, and you can download and listen anytime you want.
Absolutely. And so there are a couple other options for people to get onto it, and I'm on one of them, the one that I use all the time, which is for all my podcasts. But can you give us the two areas that you can just go quickly to get them at?
Well, I'll tell you, we always push AUSA.org because,
Sure.
you know, it's central to our website. But I know
Sure.
that there's, and you can help me out because we talked about this earlier. There's two other places there, right?
Podbean.
That's right.
Podbean and YouTube. Yep. So
YouTube.
I didn't mean to throw you for a loop there real
No,
quick, but I use Podbean because it controls, and I know love to support AUSA.org, but Podbean kind of keeps all my podcasts all in one. It automatically downloads them. It keeps track of which ones I've listened to, which ones I haven't, how much have I, if it'll say like 88% played, which means I haven't finished listening to it, and I'll finish up when I get a chance. So Podbean is one, but of course, I'm a big YouTube guy as well. So they have them posted on YouTube as well. So fantastic. And so real quickly, SMA, so I would just want to highlight to the audience real quick about what are some of the key folks that you have had on this. And I picked these out of all of them. There's a laundry list. This is not to offend anybody if your name is not mentioned, but these were some of my favorite ones because I learned so much and was able to push information down to my team. So of course, obviously, SMA Grinston is always a highlight. When he comes on the net, it is always a lot of great information. Recently, you had Sergeant Major Jimmy Sellers from the Non-Commissioned Officer Leadership Center of Excellence and the USASMA Commandant, which, oh, by the way, shameless plug, in 2 weeks, Breck Time broadcast, I'm going to have the Sergeant Major Sellers and his team on this to talk about leader development. CW5 Yolanda Dixon Carter, who is our senior warrant officer advisor to the Chief of Staff of the Army. She was amazing. CSM John Samba, the CSM of the National Guard. One of my favorite episodes, Sergeant Major Edward Bell, the G4 Sergeant Major. That was a great podcast you did, SMA. That was really informative. And then one that most folks probably would not put on their list, but for me, being a huge family guy, Maria McConville, the spouse of the Chief of Staff of the Army, General McConville, was a great podcast. And just really to hear it from a spouse's perspective, it was just amazing. So real quick, one of the things that is on every podcast and is down at the bottom, you might not read it for all my listeners. Listen, if you have a recommendation for a future topic that you would love the SMA to talk about, or for someone to get on there and for him to interview, just send an email to podcast.ausa.org. It's on the ticker right now. Just send an email with the recommendation, whether or not they play it or not, or do it or not. It's up to them. But if you have recommendations, throw it their way. So that's awesome. Thank you, SMA, for that. I really appreciate that.
And thank you. And yeah, like I said, throw me the challenge. Find me some you want me to interview on our podcast. I'll be honest with you, I kind of use the title a little bit to get the inside door to get these people in here, but hey, you got to go with it, right? So
that's right.
Got a plug coming up too. I got a couple outside the box coming. So we went outside the Army here, not too far outside the Army. We interviewed one of our civilian aides to the Secretary of the Army because not many people really know about that program. Phenomenal gentleman from Philadelphia. Got a phenomenal story. I'd ask you to tune in because it's coming out real soon. And then we're still standing by for USAREC to help out with their National Hiring Day.
Yes.
But we're on hold on that one right now to release when that day is. So we're hoping to get Sergeant Major Gavia on there and do a podcast about what this is all about and how we're going to execute the National Hiring Day.
Well, you've really piqued my interest, and I'm really excited because both of those topics I love. I love my CASA. We love our CASAs here in the area and all that they do. And then, of course, Sergeant Major Gavia, there's no one better out there. So I look forward to both of those. So thanks, SMA, for that. I appreciate that. All right, moving on to our last subject before I get to a couple of questions is one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was about another avenue of leader development, another way for us to push information out to folks, and that is the newly invigorated AUSA Noon Report. So SMA, tell us about that, please.
Yeah, so I had the honor of hosting the very first AUSA Noon Report with the 16th Sergeant Major of the Army. If you haven't seen that, I ask you to go to YouTube and check it out. It was a great little quick program during lunch. And let's talk about, how did this come about? We know the recent pandemic has forced us all to change the way we do things. And because we can't be face-to-face and unite the people that we were so good at uniting as the Association of the United States Army, we came up with another way to stay connected with our audience. And that was a delivery of a virtual quick new time report, again, on subjects that are relevant to our listeners. So this is kind of like our breakfast series we used to do previously when we used to bring everybody in for breakfast, but we can't do that right now. But we've shifted to noon to try to make it an easy time for everybody so they can stop at lunch and click on the computer and bring it up. And again, we talk about the subjects that are relevant to our listeners out there. We got a couple coming up here in the very near future where General Carter Ham is going to interview Dr. Jetty. And then we have one with the Futures Commander, a good friend of mine, that's going to give us an update on what Army Futures is doing. So what I ask you to do is look out for Noon Report. Again, if you want to get registered, because you have to be registered and you can log in and ask questions. And I'm going to bring the SMA and probably the SEAC in a little bit down the road. You can log in and register at AUSA.org. And then on Showtime, you can actually go live and ask questions. And we will work hard to get all your questions in the time that we have. But we're excited about the Noon Report. Just a plug for the next one coming up here. Check out AUSA.org for the time and date, which is going to be a really good one.
Well, I'm going to help you with that plug because I already have them written down, because I will tell you, I was one of the ones. I'm not saying I was the first one, but I was with you on SMA Grinston's. I registered. Very simple to register for those watching. Very simple. They'll send you emails. They'll keep you updated. They'll give you the link. All you do is click the link and it pops you up. It's so user friendly. It adds it to your calendar automatically. Very user friendly for time management. So great. But the next 3 Noon Reports are the Honorable Jetty, of course, is 8 June. That's coming up here in a couple days. Then as you mentioned, General Mike Murray from Army Futures Command. Well, that would be 10 June.
10 June. Mm-hmm.
And then General Retired Martin Dempsey, one of my, I love him on Twitter. He just does the most amazing leadership quotes all the time. He is the 18th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States Military, and he's going to be on 15 June. And so I look forward to all 3 of those to just help me build my base of knowledge. So, all right.
And
awesome.
They're all going to be great. And again, 12 noon on those dates, 8 June, 10 June. And then 15 June. And if you, I'll tell you, General Martin Dempsey is a phenomenal leader and a wonderful gentleman to talk to. And I guarantee that is going to be a really good episode.
That if anybody is out there listening, that you put the double star by that one, because that one's going to be great. So yeah, absolutely.
Maybe we'll get him to sing a song. Maybe we'll
That's right. That's right. That's a good idea. Make him sing a song, because he's a talented singer. I saw him at AUSA last year, and he blew us away. So remember, everybody, it's 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Noon Report. Get on AUSA.org, sign up for it, get your registration done. There's no commitment. It's free. No, you don't have to be a member at all. You can do it all for free. So thanks for that, SMA. I really appreciate that. So, all right, that concludes the main questions that I wanted to get after. So now we have about 12 minutes left, and there's a couple of folks that I really want to get to some questions. And the first one is, I know it's popping up as Tori Lynn, but her real name is Victoria Bain. She's a staff sergeant out in Florida. I think I mentioned her earlier, but she asked this question: SMA, if you could change one thing about today's training and development for young leaders, NCOs, and officers, what would it be?
Well, to be honest with you, I spent the better part of 5 years trying to change a lot of it, right? So, and here's the good news. And actually, I said this today on a message I was given to some folks that I was doing an Army birthday message for. The non-commissioned officer professional development system that we have is not perfect, but it's the best in the world.
Yes.
It is, and that's not just me being partial. And I think it's the best in our Department of Defense. We are blessed to have the incredible resources that we have and the ability for us as a non-commissioned officer, the institution, to be able to shape it to what we want it to be. The Chief of Staff and the Secretary of the Army gave me full reign within legal boundaries, of course, to be able to put anything I needed into within reason and necessary resources required to develop the NCO Corps that we have. And Sergeant Major of the Army Grinch is doing the same thing in carrying. It will never be done, okay? It is not perfect, but it is pretty darn good. And I can tell you is some people get more out of it than others. That's the honest to God truth.
Yep.
It's like one of those things. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. I honestly put my heart and soul into it. I took every single non-commissioned officer education experience very seriously. And when I was a TRADOC Sergeant Major, I thought that we had to do a lot to improve it, and most of it in the area of rigor and relevance, okay, to make it harder, to make it. People used to complain to me all the time, why isn't it worth college credit? You know why? Because it's multiple choice. If you want college credit, we're going to start doing comprehension. We're going to start, and we are. And that's why things like MLC are the way they are. That's why the Sergeant Major Academy now is a very, very writing intensive course. It can be improved, and that's okay. It should never be complete, but it's pretty darn good. I don't know if many of you know that major universities, when I was a TRADOC Sergeant Major, came to us to see how we were delivering online training to 1.2 million users simultaneously.
Wow.
We were the largest online delivery education system in the world. They came to us, and I'm talking about major schools. Carnegie Mellon University did a study with us on online delivery.
Wow.
And they all wanted to replicate what we had. We often take for granted the product that we have, but here's a quick story too. When I was the TRADOC Sergeant Major,
please, Sergeant Major,
the commandant calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, I just want to let you know before you get a call, I got a complaint today." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, we took the curriculum down for BLC off of the website, because what we were doing is we were creating structured self-development at the time, and we were rewriting all the curriculum, so we took it all down. Prior to that, you could pretty much, anybody could log in and look at the curriculum." And I said, "Okay, so what's the problem?" He goes, "Well, one of the Fortune 500 companies called me and said, 'Hey, what happened to all the training modules for the leader development course?'" And he said, "Well, we took it down." "Well, when is it going to be back up?" He said, "It's not. The new stuff we're not going to make open source, He said, "Because we're changing it." And this Fortune 500 company, I won't use their name, says, "Well, how are we supposed to get the update?" I kid you not, their principal leader development course was founded on be, know, and do.
Wow.
This is a Fortune 500 company.
Wow.
For their leader development school for their up and coming leaders inside the organization. They were literally downloading our course content off of BLC and delivering it to their people.
Wow.
So we got a pretty darn good education system. It's not perfect, but it's the best in the world.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's a great story based on be, know, do. All right, great. All right, well, thanks, Victoria Bain out there in Florida. Thanks for that great question. And so now I want to go to a near and dear friend of yours that you know, and he's going to ask you a very challenging question, but I think it's a relevant question. And I know the SMA has kind of moved on and is focused on this, kind of what you guys started or what you started in your team and moving it forward. And I'm a big advocate of it. And that's coming from Sergeant Major retired Troy Well. It says, "Why was changing the APFT to the ACFT so important to the Army? Can you please help us understand a little bit of why was it such a big deal to do it and then do it now?"
Yeah, I guess I'm the guy that gets blamed for this. I'm sure there's a whole lot of people in the Army cursing me out. Hey, here's the deal. Nobody likes change, but we needed it for many reasons. Where did this all start? This actually started almost 8 to 10 years ago, believe it or not. This has been in development for that long. Back when I was a TRADOC Sergeant Major, talk of a new APFT, an Army physical fitness test, was brewing when I first came in there. But what really accelerated into high speed was when Congress came back and said, we want to lift the restriction of females serving in previously closed combat MOSs, right? So we said to ourselves that we needed two things. One, a predictive test for recruiting to ensure that people were physically capable of performing their military occupational skill, something we had never had, right? So we checked them medically, but we never really physically assessed them. We had a 1+1+1, but that wasn't regulatory. That was just something we did to make sure they could meet the entry requirements for basic training. So we started this development process of taking a look at, well, what are the standards to be a soldier? So we reached out to all the proponents, and they came back with all these reasons, all these tasks. And we narrowed those tasks down into 31 common, high physically demand tasks, right? That were common to most MOS, not all of them, but common to most MOS. And we started saying, okay, what's the standard for these things? So instead of everybody reporting standards, because we were getting all types of different standards for how long it took the road march and what it was this, we said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go out to the Army. We're going to test the Army we have, and we're going to figure out what the standard is. We're going to figure out what they can do, right? Because you can't have one standard and the Army being at something else.
Right.
So for the better part of 2 years, that's what we did. We went out and we tested it. And we came back with all this data. We took this wasn't just a bunch of us old sergeant majors sitting in a room trying to figure out what to do. This was the experts, the leading experts in the nation. Our folks up at USARA in the Army, the exercise science professionals, people that do this for a living, took all this data, collected it, and they said, what is the predictive test we can use to, one, entry-level soldiers coming in the Army to see if they have the potential to be able to perform these high physically demand tasks, and two, a physical fitness test that measures more than 3 components, because that's what the APFD does, and measures 10 components of fitness, and closely, because it's not perfect, replicates the largest majority of those high physical demand tasks that soldiers are expected to do on the battlefield on a daily basis.
Exactly.
And that's where both the OPAT, the Operational Physical Assessment, the one you have to take before you join the Army, and the ACFT were born. That's exactly the reason. It wasn't anybody's heartfelt desire to do deadlifts. It's because when you have to lift the litter up, it's an exact replication. When you have to lift heavy weight and bend over, when you have to load the CAT, which is the ammo carrier for artillery, that's replicating that task. When you have to drag a body, all those things require you to do exercise that's closely simulated to the 31 high physically demand tasks that were most alike across the spectrum of high physically demand MOSs. So that's where the ACFT came from. Okay. Is it perfect? Nope. Is it better than what we had?
Yes.
Yeah. Is the APFT broken? No. The APFT does exactly what it was designed to do, and it's actually very good at doing it. It was designed to measure 3 components of fitness, be gender and age specific, and be able to be done anywhere at any time with no equipment. It is very good at what it was designed to do, right? It's not designed to measure your ability to be able to do a physically demanding task within your military occupational skill. That's what the ACFT is for. But here's the need part. We had to do this. And it's not because of the exercises or the number of events. It's because of the regulatory requirements. Here's the truth. You didn't have to take the APFT. That was our problem. As a sergeant in the Army, and I won't even tell you the numbers, they were appalling of the number of people in the United States Army that were not taking the 3 event APFT. You wouldn't even fathom the numbers. They were staggering, right? And because the regulation allowed you not to. By regulatory requirements, all you had to do was a 2.5-mile walk.
That's right.
Is that enough? Honestly, you can look any soldier in the face, and you can look this one. I'll tell you the truth every single time. That is not enough to demonstrate your ability to maintain physical readiness to be in the United States Army. What we had to do is get a test that closely replicates what we do as soldiers fighting in combat, and we had to make it relevant to the task at hand, and we had to make it mandatory. We have to. We have to. It requires our survival as an Army, which ensures the survival of our nation. We got to get back at being physically fit. We got to be back at being deployable. There's no such thing as a non-deployable unit in the Army. And we have to get serious about it. And that's all the reasons in a sum up of why we brought back why we developed the ACFT and how, and the necessity for us to do it.
Absolutely. And I will throw this out there for those folks that are maybe naysayers to it. Until you just take it. Just take it. It's not that hard. And it's very replicative. Go ahead.
Some people have to walk in the water to realize it's wet. Some people have to touch the fire to realize it's hot. I promise you. Here's what I know too. If you're in shape, you'll be okay.
That's right. Absolutely.
If you're not, you'll fail.
That's right.
That's right.
And you have to train for it. You have to prepare for it. So absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, SMA. So that's about wrapping up our time. But I've been debating whether or not to bring this question up, and Mark Halliburton is a great friend of mine, but I think it's the right time. I think we need to quickly take a few minutes to talk about it. So I'm going to pop it up. SMA, there's a lot going on in the world right now, right? And so what advice would you give a senior leader or just any leader talking to their soldiers about what's going on right now in America with, the everything going on. What advice would you give us on how to kind of get after that?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a great question, and one that needs answers, because we have to talk about it, right?
Absolutely.
First and foremost, soldiers are bipartisan. Okay. Our job is to defend the liberties and freedoms of our people and not decide what those liberties and freedoms are. They've been decided. They have been decided. Our job is to enforce and preserve those liberties and freedoms. Okay. And it's not our job to get on there and take sides, at least not in the eyes of an American soldier. Okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. And I honestly believe that. Whether you act upon that and whether you publicize that is a difference, right? So you're entitled to your opinion. But as soldiers, we are held to a higher standard by the American people, as we should be. We are regarded as an institution that is neutral and does what is right and just, and will defend them and even give up their own lives to do so. What was done was wrong. We can't right that. But what we can't do is make a situation worse than it is now. You can express your opinion. I believe in that. I will die for that. I will give my life to protect those people who peacefully protest. But what we can't do is hurt others. We get paid as soldiers to protect the freedoms and liberties of our people and protect everybody. And it just hurts me as an American citizen to see that we would use physical violence to demonstrate our passion for something that is so important, critically important. It's just, in my thought, it's not the right way to do it. But my advice to soldiers is stay bipartisan, stay neutral, okay? Keep your opinions, if they are political or biased in nature, to yourselves, and do what's right in the face of the American people, because your presence means more than you think. A soldier in uniform is comfort. It is relief. It is a guarantee of promise. In a storm or a crisis, they see a soldier and they say it's going to be okay. And that's what they need to see now. And that's what the American people continue to need to see, because that's what we represent, what is all good about this nation.
SMA, well said. And I'm not even going to try to say it any better, because that was perfectly said. So thank you so much. And I didn't mean to take you down that one, but I think, as you said, we have to talk about it. There was a wrong done, and we have to talk about it. And so thank you so much for that. All right, SMA. Well, it's time. It's been an hour and a half, and it doesn't even seem like it, literally. And I know that Holly and Carolyn are both probably saying, what the heck are they doing? But again, I want to go ahead and allow you to do your quick closing comments, and then I'll go ahead and do mine, and then we'll go ahead and get back to our families. So SMA, I'd like to turn it over to you first for your closing comments, please.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank every soldier and every civilian and every community member and every partner out there that has made me a success throughout my career, and the entire team at the Association of United States Army. We got a phenomenal team. Like I mentioned, the 9 regions, 122 chapters, great Americans out there working very hard for us. And thank you, Sergeant Major, for what you're doing to help us communicate with our audience and get our word out there to our soldiers, our family members, and our great community partners. It has been an absolute pleasure this evening to spend some time with you. Sergeant Major, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to interview you on my podcast series, and then we're going to put them side by side on YouTube and see how many thumbs up we get. No, I'm just kidding. But we got to bring you on the show. We got to bring you on the show and talk about why it's so important to communicate. So I had a blast tonight, and thanks for having me. And I hope everybody enjoyed the talk.
Well, SMA, thank you. And that would be a huge honor, as this is my passion. I don't have very many hobbies, but this is one of them. And along with NCOPD Live and Freestyle Every Day and a bunch of other folks, we're just trying to help educate and help give a little NCODP to our folks virtually, that they can watch it at home and they can watch it whenever they're ready. So thanks. So to you, as a leader, as someone that I look up to, thank you for your service. First of all, thank you for all that you did for our Army and that you continue to do for our Army. You are right in what you said. The job will find you, and the job that you're in found you, because as much as Sergeant Major Preston, SMA Preston did a great job. But you are the right person to take over for him as he transitions to full retirement and gets to spend some quality time. You're the right person for the job. There's no doubt in my mind. And I look forward to continuing to work alongside you, along with AUSA and my local chapter in my region, and continuing to do the great things that we're doing for our Army. So thank you for what you continue to do every day. And I'm just so proud, honored, and humble to have you on my Breck Time broadcast tonight. And so thank you for taking time, especially late in the evening, because it is 9:30 right now. It's probably past your bedtime. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And to all my listeners that have hung on, thank you so much for tuning in. This tonight, I have been so nervous about interviewing the SMA, Dan Dailey, right? The Dan Dailey. And so it's almost over, and I feel so relieved and so relaxed now because it was a great time. And thank you so much. An hour and a half went by so quick. But I would be remiss if I didn't throw out a plug for my podcast in 2 weeks. I already told you. I'm going to have Sergeant Major Jimmy Sellers on from the USASMA. I'm going to have Bill Overstreet. He's one of the guys down there. And then, of course, Sergeant Major Hal that works out there for the Sergeant Majors Academy. We're going to talk a lot of the same stuff that you, Sergeant Major, talked about on your Army Matters podcast. But we're going to do it live. We're going to do it a little bit face-to-face here like we're doing tonight. But it's going to be one heck of a night, and I look forward to that. So please tune in next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for Breck Time broadcast, either on Facebook Live or on YouTube, or check us out on Instagram and Twitter as well. So again, SMA, thanks to you. Thanks to Holly for putting up with us tonight. Have a wonderful evening tonight, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. And just remember, stay safe. Talk to your soldiers. Talk to someone that you haven't talked to in a long time. Send them a text, give them a call, let them know that you care about them, because we're all in this together. So everybody, good night. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. See you later. Army Strong.